As soon as I was released from group homes, I was eager to explore my newfound freedom. I was ready to date, ready to find a man, and to experience life outside the constraints of the past 2 years. Grindr hadn't yet arrived, and the internet was just beginning to evolve. My mom, knowing I needed to socialize, set a few ground rules. No drugs, no drinking, and no dating men older than 20. I was still 8 months away from turning 18, and after 2 years in group homes, she wasn't keen on letting anything illegal happen. I agreed, and there were no issues. She let me be myself. My first real date was with Chris, a goofy suburban guy who managed a tuxedo rental shop inside the Sears at the mall. He was a baseball fan, so our first date, he took me to a Fresno State game. I had a blast, but was confused by the vibes. It felt more like a friend zone situation than anything romantic. The night ended with him getting violently sick in the parking lot, which was an interesting turn of events. He drove me home and immediately left to rest. We dated for a few weeks, but I quickly realized there were no sparks. So we amicably called it off, and I returned to the hunt for a connection. Around this time, social media was in its infancy. AOL Instant Messenger, AIM, was the go-to for chatting with friends, and AOL's gay chat rooms were where I met Anthony. Anthony was tall with curly hair, and I was instantly struck by his looks. My confidence was low, so I didn't think I'd be his type, but within 30 minutes of meeting him in person, we were making out. My worries melted away. Things escalated quickly between us, and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Anthony's mom liked me well enough, though she wasn't thrilled about me sneaking into his bedroom late at night. I'm not sure how or why we broke up, but it was mostly amicable. We were still attracted to each other, and I even got caught sneaking into his room months later, needing Jamie to come pick me up. Only 4 months after leaving the group homes, I had already been with 2 guys. During my time in the Christian group home, I used to imagine what it would be like to have a boyfriend, someone I could be inseparable from, always holding hands or cuddling. But reality was a lot messier. Relationships were far harder to maintain than the fairy tale versions I had envisioned. As I continued searching for love, I found myself revisiting a familiar, dangerous territory, gay.com. It had been the site where, as a young teen, I lied about my age to hook up with older men. Now, just a few months shy of turning 18, I logged in again. I was no longer the clueless 13-year-old, but the temptation was still there. It was on gay.com that I met Adrian, an 18-year-old skater boy with an anarchist streak. He wrote for a zine, volunteered with Food Not Bombs, and was into Riot Girl and punk music. He introduced me to Le Tigre and Sleater Kinney. We couldn't have been more different, which is probably why we were so drawn to each other. Adrian had a dominant personality, and I, being more timid, desperately wanted to impress him. One day while he was registering me to vote, I found out that he had affiliated me with the Communist Party without asking. My first voter card arrived, and there it was in black and white, Communist. At first I was confused, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be around him, to be part of his world. Soon I spent so much time at Adrian's house that when his family planned a Disneyland vacation, they invited me to come along. The trip was partly for financial reasons, as the 10-person pass was cheaper, but I still felt honored. I thought this is what being in a relationship was supposed to feel like. It wasn't until a few months later that I realized I was changing myself to fit Adrian's world. It became clear that I had been molding my personality and interests to align with his. This pattern would haunt me throughout my romantic life. Our relationship eventually deteriorated, and one day Adrian coldly told me he didn't want to see me anymore. No emotion, no explanation. We were done. I was devastated, but also strangely relieved. I couldn't quite process the mix of emotions. When I got home, my mom tried to comfort me. She wasn't fond of Adrian, so she was happy we had broken up, though she assured me my feelings were valid and that I would move on. I swore off dating for a few weeks, avoiding chat rooms and ignoring the cute guys at the GSA meetings. I was angry. But then TJ invited me to hang out at Starbucks with his friends. I didn't know it at the time, but TJ had a huge crush on me. I didn't feel the same way, so I missed all the signs. When his friend Drew showed up, we clicked, and TJ became upset. I had no idea how hurt he was until much later. TJ's resentment grew as Drew and I started dating, and though I didn't realize it at the time, I feel it's important to acknowledge the pain we inadvertently caused him. I tried going on one date with him after Drew and I split, but there was no real connection. Drew and I were together for almost a year. About 6 months into our relationship, my mom passed away, and as I write about her in other essays, it was an incredibly difficult time. Drew, still a high school senior, did his best to support me through it. I'll admit I didn't know how we managed to balance school and being there for me while I navigated grief. He was my first true love, and while we eventually broke up, I now look back and see him as a saint, doing the best he could in the face of overwhelming circumstances. Though I held on to a lot of resentment after we ended things, I'm grateful for his presence in my life during the darkest time I've ever faced. He set high and unattainable expectations for the men who would come after him.